Hello, dear mythic journeyers, and welcome. Today we embark on a grand and thoughtful voyage through the life of Apollo, the Greek god whose story shines with brilliance and cracks with thunder. Prepare to be immersed in a philosophical narrative that traces Apollo's path from his miraculous birth to his ultimate fate. Along the way, we'll uncover lesser-known facets of his legend, from his winter sojourns in mysterious Hyperborea to the dark plagues he cast, from his tender loves of Hyacinthus and Cyparissus to the vengeful wrath he unleashed on the proud. Apollo is a deity of duality, healer and destroyer, lightbringer and punisher, musician and archer. His journey reflects deeper truths about human nature, the divine, and destiny. So sit back and enjoy this epic tale that is poetic yet accessible, blending mythology with reflection. Let's begin our story of Apollo, the eternal light and shadow. Introduction: the twin faces of light and darkness. Dawn breaks over Mount Olympus as a new god enters the world, Apollo, radiant child of Zeus and Leto. From the very first breath, he is a being of contrasts. In one hand, he carries a lyre, bringing music and joy. In the other, a bow with arrows that can deal death and disease. He is the light bringer, called Phoebus, bright, driving away darkness with shafts of sunlight. Yet those same shafts can fester as arrows of plague, striking down the unjust or the impious. The ancient Greeks saw in Apollo a paradox, a god who sends illness and heals it, who inspires poetry and prophecy, but also mete out punishment without mercy. What can we learn from such duality? Perhaps that truth and wisdom often emerge from the tension between opposites, that even in the divine, light and darkness coexist, each giving meaning to the other. Apollo's story, like a great poem, is filled with joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, harmony and wrath. To follow his tale is to witness the blossoming of insight through experience. In Apollo's radiance and shadows, we just might glimpse reflections of our own human nature, our capacity for kindness and cruelty, for reason and passion. Let us now journey with Apollo through the tapestry of myth and time, watching as he dances between extremes, ever seeking balance and understanding. Birth of a god, triumph over darkness. Our story begins long ago, when the Titaness Leto wandered the earth, heavy with child by mighty Zeus. Hera, the jealous queen of the gods, had forbidden any land to shelter Leto's labor. Shunned and in pain, Leto finally found refuge on the floating Isle of Delos, a barren rock that courageously welcomed the exiled mother. Under a swaying palm tree, with the gentle aid of Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, born moments before, Leto brought Apollo forth into the world. Legend says that as Apollo's infant lips touched nectar and ambrosia, he sprang up in full vigor, a divine child glowing with golden light. Immediately, the newborn god proclaimed, "The lyre shall be my friend, and the bent bow my companion, and in oracles of truth will I delight the hearts of men." With this, the journey of Apollo commenced, a journey destined to shape the fortunes of gods and mortals alike. Yet even in his earliest moments, Apollo confronted darkness. Only a few days old, the precocious god set out to claim his rightful domains. In the rugged region of Delphi, on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, dwelled a monstrous serpent dragon named Python. This foul creature, born of Gaia, terrorized the land and guarded the ancient oracular shrine of Mother Earth. Python had also harassed Apollo's mother Leto during her pregnancy, seeking to prevent his birth. The young Apollo, bold and unerring, could not let such evil fester. With a silver bow in his hand and resolve in his heart, Apollo hunted Python. A swarm of arrows, bright as sunbeams, sharp as justice, flew from Apollo's bow. Each struck true. The battle was fierce but swift. Python's venom and fury were no match for the piercing light of Apollo. The creature collapsed, its coils unraveling in death. Apollo had slain the serpent, liberating the sacred site. In that moment, the world saw Apollo as a banisher of darkness, a champion who overcomes the malevolent forces that threaten life and order. However, victory bore a cost. Python was a child of the earth, and killing this ancient guardian brought a stain of miasma, spiritual pollution, even to a god. Apollo, though divine, was not above the laws of fate and justice. To atone for Python's blood, Apollo submitted to purification rites and established the Pythian Games at Delphi in the serpent's honor. This humble act is an early hint of Apollo's complexity. He must uphold harmony and cosmic law, even when he himself transgresses it through necessary acts. Here is a lesson that echoes for us all, that even the righteous must reflect and atone, recognizing the delicate balance between right and wrong. With Python defeated, Apollo claimed Delphi as his own sacred ground. The old oracle of Gaia became the oracle of Apollo, and the site would soon be famed across the world as the center of prophecy and wisdom. Apollo's priestess, the Pythia, would speak cryptic truths inspired by the god, guiding kings and commoners alike. From this mountaintop sanctuary, Apollo's voice would whisper of destiny, proving him to be not only a god of action and light, but of insight and foresight as well, guardian of prophecy in the far north. Having secured his oracle, Apollo was established as a god of prophecy, the one who could decipher Zeus's will and the patterns of fate. At Delphi's temple, two mottos were inscribed that captured Apollo's philosophical essence: know thyself and nothing in excess. These simple yet profound sayings invite mortals to seek self-understanding and balance, virtues Apollo himself embodied and taught. As the patron of the oracle, Apollo became a bridge between divine knowledge and human seekers. Through him, people confronted their destinies, for better or worse. Indeed, Apollo's prophecies were always true, but not always easy to grasp. Much like life's truths, they often arrived in riddles and paradoxes. This reminds us that truth can be elusive and must be approached with humility and wisdom. Though Apollo shone brightly over Greece, even a sun god needs renewal. Here enters a fascinating, lesser-known chapter of Apollo's tale, his connection to Hyperborea, the mystical land beyond the north wind. In Greek myth, Hyperborea was a hidden realm at the edge of the world, where the sun shone gently and eternal spring reigned. Its people, the Hyperboreans, lived in perpetual joy, untouched by war or winter's chill. Apollo, it was said, had a special bond with this idyllic land. Each year, when the harsh winters fell upon Greece, Apollo departed his usual haunts and journeyed to Hyperborea. Some imagined he rode a chariot drawn by swans, flying north to the land of never-ending music and feasting. There, the Hyperboreans honored him with songs played on lyres and flutes. They danced and sang with the god in an everlasting festival of peace and art. In that distant refuge, Apollo was not a stern prophet or avenger. He was a carefree youth again, reveling in pure light and delight. This cyclic retreat to Hyperborea highlights Apollo's dual existence. Part of him belonged to the structured, sun-baked Greek world of duty and fate, but another part sought the liberating serenity of a paradise beyond mortal reach. Even Apollo, patron of moderation, partook in a rhythm of exertion and rest, engagement with the world and withdrawal to solitude. Philosophically, one might see in this the need for balance in our own lives. The balance between our responsibilities and our need to recharge in a personal Hyperborea. It also suggests that even the gods yearn for a taste of utopia, a reminder of how things could be in an ideal world of harmony. When spring returned to Greece, Apollo would fly back from Hyperborea, refreshed and renewed in spirit. The swan song fading into the Aegean breeze signaled that Apollo Phoebus was again present at Delphi, ready to illuminate the world with prophecy and inspiration. Through these gentle cycles, Apollo stands as a symbol of renewal and the enduring nature of hope. No winter, literal or metaphorical, lasts forever, and light always returns. Music, medicine, and the lyre of harmony. Apollo's dominion was not won by bow and prophecy alone. He was equally the god of music, poetry, and healing, civilizing arts that uplift the human soul. The lyre, a small harp, became Apollo's iconic instrument, and its origin story adds a playful note to our narrative. According to legend, the infant god Hermes once sneaked off and stole Apollo's cattle for mischief. When confronted, clever Hermes offered Apollo a peace offering, a newly invented lyre crafted from a tortoise shell and cow gut strings. Apollo's anger melted the instant his fingers strummed the lyre. Such was the sweetness of its sound. Enchanted, Apollo accepted the lyre and in exchange granted Hermes forgiveness and the caduceus staff. Thus Apollo became the master of the lyre, and through it, the master of music. From then on, wherever Apollo went, the gentle strumming of his lyre was never far, calming anger, soothing hearts, and inspiring creativity. Under Apollo's patronage, music and medicine often intertwined. He taught humans the healing arts and mentored the centaur Chiron, who in turn taught many Greek heroes about herbs and cures. In fact, Apollo fathered Asclepius, the demigod of medicine, with Coronis, a mortal princess. Asclepius inherited Apollo's gift of healing to such an extent that he could even raise the dead. Mortals rejoiced in these miracles, but Zeus, the king of gods, grew wary. In fear that the natural order was upended by resurrecting the dead, Zeus struck Asclepius with a thunderbolt, killing him. This tragedy unveils yet another facet of Apollo's character, his capacity for grief and righteous anger. Enraged at the loss of his beloved son, Apollo took swift vengeance. He fired his arrows and slew the Cyclopes, the giant smiths who had forged Zeus's thunderbolt. It was a shocking act of defiance against the king of Olympus. Zeus, in turn, could have punished Apollo severely, perhaps even banished him to Tartarus. But instead he chose a more compassionate justice. Apollo must learn humility through service. For 1 full year, Apollo was banished from Olympus and made to serve a mortal king, Admetus of Thessaly. Disguised as a simple young man, Apollo became a cowherd in Admetus's household. Far from the halls of power and splendor, the god experienced the mortal world's simplicity, the warmth of a farmhouse hearth, the ache of physical labor, the bitter sweetness of friendship untainted by divinity. Admetus, a kindly ruler, treated his strange new servant with respect, unaware of his identity. Touched by the king's hospitality, Apollo blessed Admetus's herds so that each cow bore twins. During Apollo's humble servitude, he also repaid Admetus by helping him win the hand of Princess Alcestis, yoking a lion and a boar to a chariot as the bridal task. The year passed in quiet contentment, and Apollo returned to Olympus having learned empathy and patience. This episode is humbling and profound. Even a god can grow wiser by walking in the shoes of the lowly. It suggests that true wisdom comes with understanding all walks of life. Apollo's healing powers, too, gained a new depth after knowing suffering and toil firsthand. Love and loss, Hyacinthus and Cyparissus. Apollo's life was not only about slaying monsters and guiding kings. It was also marked by love, joyous and tragic. The immortal, ever-youthful Apollo was famously handsome, and he felt passion as deeply as any mortal. Yet, his loves often ended in sorrow, hinting that even the divine cannot escape fate's caprices. Two of Apollo's most poignant love stories are those of Hyacinthus and Cyparissus, both lesser known yet deeply moving tales that reveal the tenderness and vulnerability within the sun god. Hyacinthus was a beautiful Spartan prince, a youth of remarkable grace. Apollo adored him. Together, the god and the mortal boy would roam the green meadows, hunt, and compete in friendly athletic games. One bright afternoon, as the sun shone high and the world felt alive, Apollo and Hyacinthus engaged in a discus-throwing contest. Apollo, eager to impress his beloved friend, spun the disc with all his strength. The bronze discus cut through the air like a shooting star. Hyacinthus, excited, dashed forward to catch it. But fate can be cruel in an instant. The discus, deflected by a jealous wind, the west wind, Zephyrus, who also loved the boy, struck Hyacinthus in the forehead. Apollo watched in horror as Hyacinthus collapsed, blood staining the wildflowers. The god rushed to his side, cradling the dying youth in his arms. Apollo's healing skills were useless in this moment. The wound was beyond any remedy. Heartbroken, Apollo refused to let Hyacinthus vanish into Hades. From the young prince's blood, Apollo caused a new flower to bloom, the deep purple hyacinth. As the petals unfolded, Apollo inscribed them with the letters Ai. Ai, the sound of his lament. Hyacinthus thus lived on as a flower, immortal in nature if not in flesh. Every spring, When the hyacinths bloom, Apollo's grief and love are remembered. In Sparta, a festival called the Hyacinthia was held in the youth's honor, celebrating the brief beauty of life and the promise of rebirth. In this tragic love, we see Apollo's gentle side and the depth of his emotions. The story of Hyacinthus reflects the fragile nature of happiness, how life's sweetest moments can be shattered by unforeseen tragedy, and yet how art and memory, the flower, the festival, allow love to endure beyond loss. A similar tale of love and metamorphosis is that of Cyparissus, a young man from the island of Ceos. Apollo loved him dearly as well, and gifted him a magnificent tame stag as a companion. The stag was Cyparissus's pride and joy. They were inseparable, wandering under the forest canopies and beside calm lakes. One day, while out hunting, Cyparissus made a fatal mistake. Not realizing his beloved stag was resting nearby, he threw a javelin at what he thought was a wild animal stirring in the bushes. The spear pierced the stag, and the gentle creature died in Cyparissus's arms. The boy's grief was immeasurable. He sobbed and sobbed, his tears coming like a summer rain. Apollo found Cyparissus broken with sorrow. Though the god tried every comfort, nothing could mend the youth's heart. He wished only that he could die, to join his stag. In a final act of mercy, Apollo transformed Cyparissus into a cypress tree, the very tree that weeps resinous tears and stands watch over graves as a symbol of mourning. Tall, dark, and evergreen, the cypress became Cyparissus's new form, forever expressing his grief. Apollo stood beside the newly formed tree and quietly mourned. Yet there was bittersweet beauty in it too, for Cyparissus would now live eternally in the world as a gentle, whispering tree. From that day on, the cypress is associated with remembrance and sorrow, a reminder that love and loss are intertwined. The tale of Cyparissus shows us that even divine love cannot shield one from pain. And sometimes the greatest mercy is in transformation and remembrance. In both Hyacinthus and Cyparissus, Apollo's love ended not in bliss, but in transformation. Humans turned into nature's living monuments. These gentle myths invite a philosophical reflection. Love is powerful, but it does not always conquer death. What it can do is transmute suffering into meaning. Apollo's response to heartbreak was to create something beautiful: flowers, trees, ensuring that from grief grew new life. For us, this suggests that our own losses, while painful, might inspire us to create, remember, and celebrate what was loved, keeping it alive in some form forever. Apollo's romantic encounters were not limited to these two youths. He pursued Daphne, a nymph who famously escaped him by transforming into a laurel tree, giving Apollo his sacred laurel wreath, but never her heart. He loved Caronus, as mentioned, who bore him Asclepius, but whose infidelity led to her tragic demise at Artemis's arrow. He even bestowed his favor on Cassandra, a princess of Troy, granting her the gift of prophecy. But when she rejected his advances, he cursed her so that no one would ever believe her true visions. Time and again, Apollo tasted the bitterness of unrequited love, or the agony of losing those he cared for. These stories paint a portrait of a god who, despite his perfection and power, is intimately familiar with the sorrows of the heart. In Apollo's loves, we recognize the divine mirroring the human. To love deeply means to risk deep pain, and not even the mightiest immortal can escape that truth. Yet Apollo's responses, whether mourning through art or immortalizing the loved one, teach us that from heartbreak can come inspiration, growth, and wisdom, the plague-bearer and the healer. Up to now, we have seen Apollo as the bright deity of art, prophecy, and tragically beautiful love. But recall his dual nature. The same Apollo who heals can also destroy. The darker aspect of Apollo's power most often manifested through plague and punishment. In times of wrath, Apollo's arrows brought sickness to mortals, a sudden fever in the blood, a blight on the land. Why would a god of healing also unleash disease? The Greeks perceived disease as a divine retribution for wrongdoing, and Apollo, ever just, would cleanse moral corruption with purging sufferings. One famous episode of Apollo's wrath comes from the Iliad, when Agamemnon, the leader of the Greeks, dishonored Apollo's priest by refusing to return the priest's daughter. Apollo retaliated. He strode down from Olympus, his silver bow in hand, and for 9 days rained arrows of plague upon the Greek camp. Invisible death spread through the army. Men collapsed with burning foreheads, and the stench of illness choked the air. Only when Agamemnon appeased Apollo by returning the girl and offering prayers did the far-shooter hold his hand. This scene is striking. Apollo is not capricious here. He is defending the honor of the humble and demanding justice. It underscores that divine punishment in myth is often a response to human arrogance or impiety. For all his gentleness, Apollo could be fearsome when balance and righteousness were violated. Yet, Apollo's role as plague-bringer was mirrored by his equal role as plague-lifter. In many Greek cities, when pestilence struck, people prayed to Apollo for relief. They knew that the god who inflicts illness can also cure it. He had titles like Apollo Paean, healer, and Apollo Alexikakos, averter of evil. In this benevolent guise, we see, therefore, a profound idea that the forces which harm us can, when appeased or understood, be the very forces that save us. In Apollo's dual mastery over disease, one can read a parable about nature and fate. The potential for harm and help are two sides of the same coin. Often, it is through enduring hardship that one finds healing or renewal. Apollo personified that truth. Consider also Apollo's son Asclepius, the healer, who exists because Apollo himself faced heartbreak, the loss of Caronus. And yet that loss gave rise to something good, a child who would alleviate suffering. It's as if Apollo's own story encodes the message that from pain comes hope. In human terms, many advances in healing, both personal and medical, come from confronting illness. Apollo teaches that we cannot have the gift of healing without acknowledging the reality of plague. Light means nothing without shadow. Wrath and mercy, the price of hubris. Apollo's sense of justice was keen, and he did not suffer arrogance lightly. Two myths illustrate how Apollo dealt with mortals and even satyrs, who challenged the gods or scorned the divine. These are cautionary tales, revealing Apollo's capacity for merciless punishment. Yet they also reflect a cosmic order, where hubris, overweening pride, is inevitably brought low. The first is the tale of Marsyas, a satyr, half-goat, half-man, who was a master of the flute. Marsyas found a double flute that the goddess Athena had discarded, and soon, his skill on that instrument became unsurpassed among mortals. Flushed with confidence, Marsyas dared to challenge Apollo to a musical contest, lyre against flute. The competition was judged by the Muses, or perhaps King Midas and others, depending on the telling. At first, both performers were evenly matched, enchanting all who listened. But Apollo, cunning as well as skilled, proposed that they play and sing upside down. He flipped his lyre and played it flawlessly. Marsyas, with his flute, could not do the same. He fell silent, defeated. Having lost, Marsyas faced the victor's judgment. In a dark turn, Apollo bound Marsyas to a tree and flayed the skin from his body as punishment for his impudence. The satyr's blood flowed into a river, and even the gods turned away in pity at the ghastly sight. Apollo's vengeance was terrifying. The gentle music god was nowhere to be seen in that moment of retribution. To modern eyes, this feels excessively cruel, but the Greeks meant it as a stern warning. To challenge the divine order or claim equality with the gods is to invite the most severe consequences. Apollo's harshness here underscores the importance of respecting one's place in the grand scheme of things. However, even in this grim story, there's a note of tragedy and learning. Apollo himself, one might imagine, regretted that such beauty, Marsyas' music, was lost due to pride. The flaying of Marsyas reminds us that pride and envy can destroy beauty, a truth as relevant to human nature as ever. Another story of pride humbled is that of Niobe, queen of Thebes. Niobe was a mortal woman blessed with 14 children, 7 sons and 7 daughters, and she boasted that she was superior to Apollo's mother Leto, who had only 2. This insult to his mother roused Apollo's and Artemis's ire. As Leto's loyal twin children, they could not let Niobe's arrogance stand. Swift as a sudden storm, Apollo drew his bow and shot down all 7 of Niobe's sons, while Artemis, equally vengeful, struck Niobe's 7 daughters. In an instant, Niobe's legacy, her pride and joy, lay lifeless around her. The queen's laughter turned to wails of unimaginable grief. Zeus, feeling pity at last, transformed Niobe into a stone on Mount Sipylus, a rock that, legend says, weeps with Niobe's eternal tears whenever the snow melts. This punishment of Niobe again shows Apollo in a severe light. He is the avenger of family honor and the executor of divine law. No mortal, no matter how blessed, could mock a goddess without reaping disaster. And yet, Niobe's fate also evokes empathy. She was punished for a moment of pride with a lifetime of sorrow. The gods, including Apollo, could be relentless to those who showed disrespect or excessive pride. What do these darker tales tell us philosophically? They highlight the Greek belief in balance and reverence, that one must not upset the equilibrium by elevating oneself too high. Apollo's role as punisher is that of an equalizer in the moral universe. For every Marsyas who brags or Niobe who boasts, there comes a reckoning, often swift and terrible, and Apollo, the god of light, ironically becomes the agent of dark justice in those moments. This dual capacity, to inspire and to discipline, mirrors how life's corrections can be painful but meaningful. Sometimes we learn our limits the hard way. Sometimes the destruction of illusion, however harsh, is necessary for wisdom. Apollo's unforgiving response to hubris teaches the timeless lesson of humility, to know oneself, as the Delphic maxim commands, is also to know one's limitations. Yet Apollo was not without mercy or kindness, even in justice. We saw how he atoned after slaying Python. We see him regretting and memorializing those he loves. Even in the case of Admetus, Apollo's service was a sort of penance that ultimately benefited mortals. If Apollo could be harsh, he could also be compassionate when moved by loyalty or goodness. One beautiful example is during the Trojan War. Apollo favored the young Trojan prince, Hector, for that warrior's noble spirit. When Hector was slain by Achilles, Apollo protected Hector's corpse from decay and mutilation out of respect, shrouding it in his gentle rays until it could be honorably ransomed and buried. In doing so, Apollo silently protested the desecration of a hero's body, showing honor even to a fallen foe. Through gestures like this, Apollo revealed a moral conscience, a code that valued honor and dignity. Destiny and the eternal Apollo. As years turned to centuries in our mythic timeline, Apollo continued to play pivotal roles in countless tales. He guided heroes, such as Odysseus and Aeneas, through his oracles and subtle interventions. He stood with the gods in the great war against the giants, his arrows blazing like shooting stars on the battlefield. He watched kingdoms rise and fall, always with the lyre in one hand and the bow in the other, ready to bless or to punish as deserved. Apollo's presence was so deeply woven into the tapestry of Greek life that one might ask, did he himself have an ultimate fate, a closure? Unlike mortal heroes, the gods do not die, and Apollo's story has no death scene to conclude it. Instead, his fate is more metaphorical and far-reaching. In one sense, Apollo's ultimate fate was to become a bridge to the future. As the classical Greek era gave way to new ages, Apollo's oracular shrine at Delphi eventually fell silent. Some say the last oracle declared the end of Apollo's worship when new faiths arose. The temples crumbled and the rituals ceased. But Apollo did not vanish. He transformed once again, this time from an active deity of a living religion into a powerful symbol and archetype. Through the ages, Apollo came to represent the ideals of reason, order, and enlightenment. The philosophers of later antiquity and the Renaissance thinkers revered Apollo as a muse for art and intellect. Even Nietzsche, in modern philosophy, spoke of the Apollonian spirit of rationality and beauty, as opposed to the Dionysian spirit of passion and chaos. In that regard, Apollo's light never truly dimmed. It was distilled into the cultural DNA of Western thought. Looking back over Apollo's journey from the Isle of Delos to the forests of Hyperborea, from the laurel groves of Daphne to the dark caverns of Delphi, we discern a unifying theme: the pursuit of harmony and wisdom. Amidst the play of opposites, Apollo was constantly balancing contradictions, youthfulness and responsibility, passion and restraint, wrath and mercy, solitude and community. In this balancing act lies a profound truth about the human and divine condition. We too navigate between extremes, seeking a harmony that is never static but always evolving. Apollo's dual identity as healer and destroyer suggests that growth often requires both creation and destruction, letting go of the old to herald the new, like a forest fire that devastates but also catalyzes fresh growth. His role as lightbringer and punisher tells us that illumination isn't gentle to all. To shine light on truth can burn those who cling to falsehoods. Apollo's life also reflects on destiny and free will. As the god of prophecy, he foresees the threads of fate. Yet as an actor in myths, he experiences surprises and consequences like any other. He could not save Hyacinthus from fate's whim, nor could he undo Asclepius's death. In these stories, we see the poignant message that even for gods, some things are predestined and unchangeable. However, what is in one's power is the response. Apollo responded to tragedy by creating beauty or seeking justice. This is a lesson to humanity. We may not control all that happens to us, but we shape the meaning of those happenings by how we respond, with creativity, with integrity, with compassion, or with bitterness. Apollo urges us to respond with the better angels of our nature, to turn our grief into art, our anger into righteous action, and our love into something that outlasts us. In the end, Apollo stands as a radiant paradox, ever young, yet wise, serene, yet quick to righteous anger, a god who could strike down armies with plague or inspire them with lyric song. His story reminds us that duality lies at the heart of existence. We crave simplicity, heroes who are purely good or villains, who are purely evil, but Apollo defies such simplification. Instead, he is whole, embodying the sun's warmth, and the sunstrokes scorch in one being. In that wholeness lies his divine completeness, and perhaps a model for human wholeness too, to accept our own contradictions and forge them into strength and understanding. As the sun sets on our narrative, imagine Apollo today, not in literal belief, but as a timeless character riding his golden chariot across the sky of our imagination. He smiles through the music of a violin. He focuses our mind when we seek to know ourselves. He challenges our arrogance when we overstep. He inspires the doctor, the poet, the archer, the philosopher. Apollo lives on as long as there is art and inquiry, love and remembrance, light and shadow in this world, which is to say, as long as humanity itself endures. Thank you, dear friends, for accompanying me on this epic journey through Apollo's myths and meanings. Just as Apollo's lyre strings together notes into melody, we have strung together events into a story that, I hope, sang to both your mind and soul. From Apollo's first cry on Delos to his enduring legacy in our cultural psyche, we've seen how rich and reflective these ancient tales can be. May Apollo's dual light guide you to find harmony in your own opposites. Until next time, farewell and keep seeking the light. If you enjoyed this mythic narrative, please like this story and subscribe for more enchanting tales of gods and heroes. I'd love to hear from you too. Comment below with your favorite character types. Do legendary kings inspire you? Or perhaps brave warriors? Are you fascinated by cunning demons and radiant angels? Or do mystical creatures capture your imagination? Let me know your favorites. Your engagement and thoughts help keep these stories alive, just as storytellers and listeners have kept Apollo's flame burning through the ages. Farewell, and may the muses bless your days.